everyone? What is going on, my peoples? Welcome to Bunker Office Hours, a weekly live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping our community start and grow their own businesses. I'm your host, the one and only Iron Mike Steadman, coming to you from Newark, New Jersey, aka the Brick City, joined by my co-host, Amy Morrison, and our guest today, Mr. Kevin Busto. What's going on, y'all?
Howdy.
Good morning.
Well, this is one of the nice things about having this platform, especially if it's your first time visiting here, is it actually allows us a great opportunity to get out in front and center and engage with entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. And one of the things I'm excited to talk to Kevin about, Kevin, you're like our target demographic, right? We know that there's a lot of veteran entrepreneurs that have transitioned out a long time ago. So in your case, 1987?
81, yeah, 81 to 87.
And so for a lot of you all, there wasn't this whole entrepreneurial ecosystem specifically for veterans when you transitioned out. And so a lot of times we put out a lot of content. We have these newsletters and whatnot, but being able to interact with the entrepreneurs that are still curious about what it is Bunker Labs does, why this is a good home for you. I'm excited to get into some more insight into that. But before we do, I got to pass it over to Amy, who's going to talk about what's happening in the bunker.
Thanks, Mike. So we just wrapped up closed application windows for VIR. So if you apply to that, you'll be hearing about that soon. And also Breaking Barriers cohort is going to start soon. So if you haven't heard about that, they'll probably hear about that soon. But what's going on is we've got a new Veteran Spotlight blog article up, Melissa Green and Badass Coffee Causes. So you can check that out on our blog. And then also, as always, check out bunkerlabs.org/community to find an event and a community near you. We're in a little bit of a lull right now before MIC is coming up. For ambassadors will be out at MIC. And then, of course, Veterans Day next month. So that's kind of it right now.
That's awesome. I'm going to be out at Military Influencer Conference. It's going to be a great time. Shout out to Cortez for setting it up. I know event planning is no joke. But there's nothing like coming together as a community. I know we got Mick, and then in February, there will be the Military Veteran Startup Conference with Tim Shea, too. So make sure y'all are marking this stuff on your calendars, man. Be on the lookout for it. But without further ado, our guest today, Kevin. Kevin, what made you reach out to get on office hours, by the way?
Just looking at some of the things that was going on with Bunker Labs, I was getting various contacts from people across Bunker Labs. Shelby was one of them. There was a few other ones, AJ, Tarika, in my local area. And looking at what they were doing, I decided it was about time to step my foot into this and take a look at it, get an idea of what everything is going on for the veterans.
Let's bring our listeners up to speed. Talk to about your entrepreneurial background, your background in the military, and let's talk about what we're excited about today, what you're working on today.
Okay. I started in the military back in 1981, joined as a combat medic, and trained in infantry as well. So I decided that was not exactly what I wanted to do. So in 1987, when I transitioned out, I decided to go back to my first love of electronics and decided that was where I was going to go. Eventually, in early 1990s, I decided to work with Hewlett-Packard as a reseller. Did that for the next about 10 years and decided that was the way they were transitioning programs there, too, as resellers. I decided it was time to move on from there. So at that point, that's when I discovered out of a magazine article a new type of image sensor for cameras. And that was a quantum leap as far as I was concerned in the way image sensors have been made to that point, color image sensors. And so I contacted the company called Fovian and told them I wanted to work with them. And design cameras, sell sensors, and work with them. But the Fovian sensor never really did take off. It had some issues. especially for military applications. That I'm not going to get into complicated stuff, but there's things called rolling shutter and global shutter. The military wanted global shutter, so it kind of closed off a lot of areas. It was great for taking pretty pictures, but for much of anything else, it wasn't very good for. So adding things on over the years was really what I started to really look into. What could I add to this? Because people started to ask, what else can you do? Can you build me an imaging sensor? Can you design me an imaging project? Can you put together systems for various applications? So the applications went through industrial applications for machine vision, military applications, which I still work in today. Of course, the newest stuff is UAVs. So medical is still a big part of it as well. But those are the things that happened over these past 22 years since I started working in the photonics industry.
How big is your team?
Actually, I am no longer have a team. I'm a person of one now. And there's a reason for that. A few years ago, I had a heart attack and had to get out of the business for a while. So I just actually picked up again about a year ago. And it was because somebody called me that I'm quite a few years back and asked me to do some consulting work. So I'm like, well, okay, I'll do some consulting work, see how things are going again. And at the beginning of this year is really when I stepped into it completely and decided that it was time to really get back into it. Of course, calling old colleagues back, some were retired, a few had passed away, but there was pretty much the rest of the industry was kind of intact yet, which is good because it made it easier to pick back up again and start working with things again. So that's one of the reasons why I really kind of am interested in going new avenues, because over those previous years before the heart attack, it was pretty much status quo. Well, now I'm looking at this going, well, there's a whole new ball game here. We need to look at other things.
Yeah. How stressful was it back in the day when you were running your business?
It was very stressful. First of all, I'm not a salesperson.
Yeah.
So the fellow that I started to work with was the sales guy, and he's the one that taught me everything he knew. I'm an engineer, so engineers don't know much about selling, and so we became what we call ourselves sales engineers. And I was really afraid of it because I had never sold really anything in my life.
Yeah, no, that's real. And the reason first of all, I want to acknowledge people tuning in. What's up, Linda, Michael? Appreciate y'all for checking us out today. But what I notice is a lot of older entrepreneurs, right? They'll do the entrepreneurial hustle, they'll build their business, and then they leave their business and they just start as like a one-man show. And sometimes I wonder, is it because the hustle and bustle, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is there something just peaceful about just being a solo founder, not necessarily having to worry about managing people and a lot of the overhead that comes with that?
There's a lot of that. There definitely is a lot of that. Because I used to keep an inventory in the old Hewlett Packard days. But what's interesting about the industry, the photonics industry, is that there's a lot of others that are very similar to me. You hear of the big companies like Sony, of course, and others that are really quite big. But when you look at the overall industry, it's very small companies, companies with under 100 employees. And there's a lot of freelancers like myself that there's a lot of those out there. So when you ask me what my team is like, it's a team of one, kind of like the Army, a team of one, but there's a lot of connectivity out there. And I work with quite a few other people when we do projects for anything in military. There's people that are specific to that. There's people in medical that are specific to that. So there's a lot of other people out there that I bring in when there is a task at hand.
So let me ask you this. How different is it starting your business, in the early 90s versus starting one in 2022 on the other side of a pandemic when the world is essentially virtual these days?
Well, back in those days, it was trying to align yourself with a big company. The computer industry was still pretty much in its infancy when it came to personal PCs. Microsoft had only been out for a few years. Apple had been around maybe a decade. Um, Dell Computer had only been around for a few years. And so you tried to find ways to align yourself with something with a bigger company. And it's not like that now. What you're looking for now is that you're looking for those to be more autonomous yourself, to be agnostic, to not really look for that company that's going to help move you along. And that's what's really part of now versus then.
Yeah. You launch your business, you get that one big contract, and then you're off to the races. Versus now,
Yeah.
it's like, it's fishing. You got to do a lot of fishing.
There is a lot of fishing. There's a lot of looking for specific technologies to fill a hole. And in the photonics industry, it has gone that route where there's a lot of niche things anymore that you can look at to do certain things. For example, right now we're working on a couple of agriculture projects. One of them is for looking at identifying diseases and parasites in milk and from milk cows. So it's this particular sensor, image sensor we're going to use, wasn't around 10 years ago.
Right. So let me ask you this, okay? Now you're connected with the bunker, right? This is your first time, doing something like this. What is it that you need as an entrepreneur? Like, what are the biggest resources that an organization like ours can provide?
Well, the biggest thing is connectivity to everybody else out there in the ecosystem that you have. I think a lot of veterans have issues with trying to find people that can help them with various things. I went the hard route. Believe me, it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
It took quite a while to get things moving. It was 5, 6 years before things really started to move. And I think now with this connectivity to a lot of other people, it's going to help veterans a great deal that are transitioning out of the military. There's even a group of farmers. There's Farm Vet Co. and there's a couple of other ones that if you want to become a farmer, you can come out of the military and go right into farming, and they'll help you out. There was nothing like this, 40 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the reasons a lot of people end up going to business school when they transition out of the military, particularly officers, is to build that professional network. And one of the things we like to pride ourselves here at Bunker is building that entrepreneurial ecosystem for veterans and military spouses that otherwise might not have it, right? And so what we're able to do is through our various different cohorts spread out all across the country, from our ambassador program, which are our ground troops, right? They're the ones in the community. There's the ones growing the ecosystem. We have our veterans and residents, right, which is our 6-month incubator program that allows you to get access to free co-working spaces at WeWork, and also go through an experience with a tribe of other entrepreneurs. And then we have our CEO circle for those growth stage entrepreneurs that are running, those $1 million businesses. But they during that time, they were just kind of grinding away, and they never really had a cohort experience. And so that's what we are doing best to provide and give people access to, programming and resources.
Yeah.
So let me stop you for a sec. Michael Persinger wants to know, are there any old school lessons that you learned about networking and getting things going that still apply today?
The big thing is to understand your market. One of the things that I learned from the old sales engineer that I worked with was understanding the market that you're in. And that was a really big part of getting things going. It was understanding that market and who was going to buy the product. So there is, as you can tell, with an imaging sensor like a fovean imaging sensor, you would think, okay, the only people I'm going to talk to are camera people. Technically, yes, but actually, no. The fovean imaging sensor went into a lot of crazy things like DNA sequencers, blood analyzers. It went into various machine vision applications for manufacturing. So it went into other things besides what you would traditionally think is a camera taking pretty pictures.
Yeah. I think one thing that your generation brings is that you understand that business is about sales, like especially in the early days. For like our generation, we just want to jump on and make TikTok videos and play around on social media and pretend like we're making progress in our businesses versus like going to see the buyer, meeting with them, jumping on phone calls. And like you said, you were smart enough early on to even say, hey, I'm an engineer. Selling isn't my skill set. So I need to recruit a partner that has that and brings that, and I think
Absolutely.
A lot of times entrepreneurs just get stuck on this hamster wheel of not really making progress in their businesses because we suck at selling, to be quite frank. We don't focus on it.
Yeah, in the business, starting out in this photonics business, people wanted to see you. So there was a lot of travel involved, of course, but they wanted to meet with people one-on-one. And I think that was important because they could, can you work with this person or can't you work with this person? There were times when I said to myself when I walked out of a meeting, I can't work with this guy. So there were times like that. But in this business, people wanted to see you.
I think it's, and I'm sure curious from our viewers, right? We are in the startup age, right? So everybody loves the cool, futuristic kind of ventures. And here you are selling photonics. And I'm still trying to figure out what the heck photonics is, but yet you've been able to do it for damn near 30 years.
Well, you just look around where you're at. The video that we're doing, that's photonics. What made these cameras function as they are? This is part of the photonics industry. So image cameras, image sensors like this is the kind of stuff that I worked with, 22 years ago. And it eventually trickled down into, you've heard the term tactical to practical. And that's essentially where a lot of this stuff came from. Many of the systems that we worked on went to the military. And then those systems have trickled down into what we're seeing right now today.
Awesome. So you guys got any questions for Kevin? Mike, always appreciate you coming in and engaging our content. But if anybody has any questions for Kevin, feel free to go drop them in the chat. And if you have a question about your own business and just need some short, quick advice, feel free to drop it in the chat as well. And we'll do our best to answer it before we wrap up as we transition into our book recommendations for the week. So Kevin, what's your book recommendation for our viewers?
Evil Geniuses by Kurt Anderson. You must read this book. Excellent book. Kurt Anderson has been around for quite a while, wrote quite a few books. And Evil Geniuses is an excellent book.
What's the summary?
Basically, it's what people have done to push things their way over the years. So if you're a fan of Adam Smith, who wrote books 200 some years ago, and talked about the haves and have-nots, Noam Chomsky, you'll like this book by Kurt Anderson.
Awesome. My book recommendation for today is Successful Black Entrepreneurs by Stephen Rogers. Stephen Rogers was a former Harvard Business School professor that basically wrote the majority of case studies that feature Black-owned businesses. And so he's compiled a lot of these stories that he taught in a course into one giant book. And it's been essentially like, I'm still in the early stages of going through it. I think I'm listening to the audio book. So it's like 12 hours. I'm at like 9 hours right now. So about 3.5 hours in. But essentially, it's like a master class on Black-owned businesses. It covers everything from franchising, entrepreneurship through acquisition, getting access to capital, just a lot of stuff. And I really like that model of, bringing agency to business literature, featuring underrepresented founders, because I read a lot of business books and I wish there were more books that featured minority-owned businesses. So it's really cool to see that. And I'm actually thinking in my own mind about how can I write content on scaling veteran-owned businesses too, because that's another niche as well. So check out that book. It's pretty cool. I'm working my way through it now, and I'm excited to share the lessons I learned throughout it, writing on my LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Now, what I want to do is we've got a couple questions. Regina wants to know, Kevin, have you pursued getting your business certified? And if so, what certifications do you have?
None. I looked at them, yes, and I found that they were really not as cracked up as what I thought they were going to be. And so you really need to examine what you're doing, because sometimes it doesn't work for some businesses. For my particular business, that it just wasn't practical to spend money to get a certification of some type. I'm a service disabled veteran, and I don't have any certification for it because it's pretty much not needed. So about the only thing that really is going to be needed is coming up. There's a thing through NIST called CMMC. And CMMC is going to be important for many small businesses, for all businesses. And basically what it is for cybersecurity. And if you aren't CMMC certified, you won't be able to do DoD business. So that's coming up very shortly. It's not a cheap thing to do. But if you want to do business, continue to do business with DoD, everybody's going to have to be doing it. So, but all the other ones that I never pursued any of them.
Got you. Well, Regina says, make sure you check out the National Veteran Volvo. Regina, can you spell it out for us? I had a chance to see Regina and Matt Pavelek, their CEO, when I was up at the Veteran Ohio Expo. So that could be a good resource.
Oh, yeah.
I know a lot of people are bullish on service-able veteran-owned business certifications because of the mandate a lot of companies have to, the government set out, supplier diversity issues, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's opportunity there, to get a government contract, right, it could be pretty cool to get that certification. But like you said, it's a whole situation to get it.
Well, the thing with it is it might be something for people that are just starting out, the new entrepreneurs. For myself, I've made a lot of connections over the years with prime military contractors.
Yeah.
And I've worked a lot with the Lockheeds of the world and Northrop and all of that. And so with them, they knew who I was already. Gotcha. So they really didn't ask. They've never asked, we need this certification. They've never asked because I've done a lot of business with them over the years anyway.
Last question real quick. Mike wants to know, have you been successful leveraging your time in the military, selling your services? If yes, how?
Well, actually, the medical part of it was a big help. It's helped me understand medical devices. So when I talk to a doctor or a nurse or somebody like that, I understand what they're doing and can adjust, anything that I'm doing to fit the requirements of what they're doing. So it's been a big help in that manner, understanding, using that knowledge from the military as a medic to be able to understand what I'm doing in the medical device markets.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, it's been a pleasure getting to connect with you. I want to welcome you to the bunker. This is your community. Again, make sure you take advantage of all the resources we got out there. You already signed up for the newsletter, but again, we've got our cohort programs, ambassador, CEO circle, and our veterans in residence. Engage with people on LinkedIn and social media, man. This is your community. This is the connectivity that we're talking about. And make sure y'all that are tuning in to be sure to show Kevin some love. Kevin, where can people find you at? How can they get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I do have a Twitter account too, but primarily LinkedIn. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there.
Awesome. And for everyone else, do me a favor and make sure you subscribe to the Transition newsletter. I need to send out a newsletter. I haven't sent out a newsletter in a minute, but you need to check out the podcast, right? The Transition podcast. I think we're up to 88 episodes. We've been running the show now for almost 2 years. And we have compiled and we're still growing, right? I think this week I'm releasing an episode on Wove, which is, you got to check it out, right? It's a way to order an engagement ring online. They send you a mock-up of your engagement ring to wear while they actually build it. Super cool. Check it out. But again, we've got a lot of great resources on that Transition podcast. Last week, I released an episode where I did a Q&A with Rob Arndt from Buffer Springs, especially for a lot of you in that early stage when you're trying to get those first initial clients, right? Jumped on there with Rob, who was able to ask some questions, and I was able to give him some great feedback, and we just had a fantastic discussion. Again, the Transition podcast, if you feel like, look, you're feeling stuck, right? You don't know what to do, listen to these stories that we're compiling from other veteran entrepreneurs and military spouses to demystify the journey. Again, there's no fluff, right? We keep it real. People take off their armor. So check out that podcast. I want to also acknowledge our virtual event sponsors that make office hours possible, as well as the transition, and that's MetLife Foundation. MetLife Foundation allows us to have this platform and just create such amazing content for the community, which we wouldn't be able to do without their support. Head over to bunkerlabs.org if you haven't done so already. Get plugged into our ecosystem. We got programs that'll take you from idea to invoice, incubate you, and position you alongside other founders and CEOs. Until next time, everyone, peace, love, and have a great rest of your week.